of you know, I'm Bob Black. I've been at this a while, and before you get too impressed with this story, first 30 years of my wood turning probably didn't count for anything. I came home from Auburn in 1957 for Thanksgiving, and my dad said, boy, we ought to have a lathe. Let's go down to Sears. We lived in Decatur, so we went down on Ponce and bought a lathe. It was that little round bed lathe. And I try not to step on anybody's toes, but on this, I don't care. If you got one of those things, find a guy with a boat. I believe if you practice a little, they vibrate so bad you could cut threads with a straight gouge on those things. It was terrible. And a lot of this stuff is fairly new. Well, lathe work goes back to Egyptian times, or maybe earlier. I don't really know the ancient history, but the stuff that we do today started in the 80s, the tooling. The first thing I remember, fine woodworking, I think in the early 70s, had an article or two by Peter Child in England. And he was talking about long and strong turning tools and rubbing the bevel. And I had no clue which either one was. I'll pass this around. I've long since sold that lathe with no regrets, but that's the gouge that came with it. Bowl or spindle, take your pick. That was the only one of 6 tools. And it's not high-speed steel. In the 70s, they went to high-speed steel. But that was a level. Lathe came with a dead center, a cup center, spur center, and face plates. That was it. Chucks were something in the metalworking world, and you were basically warned not to use them because typically on a metalworking chuck, the jaws come back out, you can eat up your knuckles pretty bad on them.
I still have one though.
Yeah.
Knuckle?
Yeah. What we're going to do, I'm going to throw out some ideas to you, pass some stuff around, and then at the end, later on, I'll actually do a little turning, which I'm an okay turner. There's several guys, or a bunch of you guys here in the room that are better than me, so you're not going to learn a whole lot from my turning skills. I'm hoping to give you some ideas of things you can do and save a little money. Some of that is going to sound like I'm anti-tool stores like Peachtree, and I guess you could take it that way. So let me say, I've been a member of Chattahoochee since before Willard died, and that goes back to the late 90s. And I've been a member of GAW for several years now and here. But the generosity of these folks to Gwinnett Woodworkers is unmatched in anything I've ever seen. So when you're buying tools, keep that in mind. I'm going to show you how to, some ways to get around buying tools. But first, what can't you do? Anything with a groove in it. Now, understand, if you got enough money and time, you can accomplish most anything. But as a practical matter, making a gouge or a bowl gouge or any of those things is just completely impractical. What I've done in any of these shapes, I'm using with hardened high-speed steel. In some cases, I've brazed it onto mild steel, and we'll talk about that towards the end. I won't do any of that because that takes a torch, and it'd be terrible if we burned down our host building, and it was my fault.
There's sprinklers in there.
Yeah. I didn't bring my gas rig, though. But to start with, this is going to be terribly exciting. Let me see what we got here. Dan said he'd like something for the raffle. So I've got a handle pretty well done. And since nothing but the best will do for you guys, we're going to do a 3/8 round. And what have we got in the way of grinding equipment?
There's just over here.
I don't need, just so I can get to it.
Yeah, it's right
Okay.
You'll put it up on the workbench here?
No, where is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you might be able to set it up. This is sort of the end of the show. These things come in the little packages in some kind of rust preventative. So I'm going to epoxy it into the handle. But first I'm wiping it down with acetone. And as I'll talk about later, it's a little sloppy in there. If this is 3/8, I'm boring a 64th over. If you bore them tight, when you put the epoxy in, they come back out. It builds up air pressure. And I like to be sure I've got epoxy all the way around. And the other thing I do is this. Are we hot?
I've got it plugged in yet.
Rob, how deep is the hole you're drilling in there?
1.5 inches typically. What locks this?
These thumb screws on the side, these thumb screws are taken out.
Oh, okay, that's okay.
These screws right here.
Okay, that's okay. We'll do it freehand.
How deep do you drill?
I'm going to bury it 1.5 inches, and that depends on how accurately I bored the hole. And what I'm going to do here,
That's for your small hand, the small kinds of tools, as opposed to a bolt gouge or a spindle gouge, right?
what?
That 1.5 inches that you're.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is the kind of stuff you'll see tonight. It's,
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
I've precisely ground some threads on there. I know that's clean, or there's no oxidation or oil probably in those little grooves.
Dan's going to get you a clamp.
I don't need a clamp, got a vise. Oh, I'm done with the grinder.
Oh, okay. Want some exercise? He doesn't need it, Dan. He does.
Well, I got them down.
If you know it, you gotta use it.
Yeah, it's in the way, Dan.
Dan, when you're right there in that position, check out that right wheel.
And
Too true. Is it loose?
Yeah, yeah, looks good.
Needs something.
when we're making tools, I do flat work too. I'm not just a turner. And I save off rips, and sometimes I make them. And that's not an off rip, that's a glue paddle. And this is a special shape. Takes lots of effort to get these, you understand. We'll see why in a minute. I'm using DevCon because that looked like a good, decent price. I suggest you stay with name brands, DevCon, Loctite. And I don't mean to tout Home Depot because they got a lot of stuff I don't like, but I think it's a good place to buy epoxy in that they turn their stock. And I feel like if these syringe type things, this is the Loctite 5-minute epoxy. It's $4.57, I think, plus tax. The difference in the I'm using the DEFCON because it's open. But you mix it up. The butter dishes are cottage cheese, all those little, I don't know.
Peanut can lid.
Yeah, just back of a piece of sandpaper will work. And now while we have the special tool, it's hard to poke the stuff down the hole. And by the way, don't believe everything you read on a label of epoxy. It'll pretty well set in 5 minutes. It won't bleed out too bad. But if you read the fine print, it talks about 24-hour cure. And while you want some space so that tool bit will go in the hole easy and not act like a piston. You don't want too much because epoxy is expensive. And I don't know if I've got enough mixed up here or not. If it squirts out of the hole, I have. Yeah, not bad. And I'm watching it. I doubt you can see it, but I'm getting some tiny little bubbles come up there. I think he messes. And the reason we're starting with this is so that epoxy will be cured and won't bleed all over your car on the way home. I detest these.
Hey, Bob, how much bigger would you say you made the hole versus
64th.
the 64th?
Yeah, and I can't ever think of how many 64ths that is over. But go to your drill set, and if you got a 3/8, go to the next. If your set goes by 64ths, get the next one up. And if it kind of gets gooey there, wipe it off a little. But that's tool assembly. You can grind before you assemble. I've got one here. I'll start passing stuff around. That's 3/8 to be a scraper because I need some scrapers on these forms I got to have for my class. This is one I picked up. Turns out it was high-speed steel. That was a skew, and I just reground this. Now, we have quizzes with this demo. You know what that is? It's not woodworking, that's carpentry and demolition. That's a Sawzall blade. You know what that is? Oh,
That's a worm saw. That's a hacksaw blade off a machine hacksaw.
no, that's in my left. The one on the bench grinder. That's a worn out Sawzall blade, which you make a parting tool with. Somebody asked me, where did I get the shape for the tip? I have no earthly idea. But the Sawzall blades, as you can see when I'll pass this around, I don't remember, that's either filled epoxy or just a little sliver of wood about the thickness of the steel. You just stick them on there and then shape them to your heart's content. I'll use this one in a minute. This is a finished one. You see? Now this was a commercial hacksaw blade. This is one I got in some kind of tool deal. Machine shops or the metalworking business has, most of their hacksaws are band saws, and they get really big. They can cut 12-inch pipe with them puppies. And if you go down to metal supermarkets, which is one of the places I'll talk about, they've got one, and it's amazing. They can take a piece. I know I got a piece of 6-inch 4140 for my son, round. Thing was dead square, and it almost looked like it had been turned on a lathe, and it came off of their saw. But there's also a mechanized hacksaw. It's referred to as a reciprocating hacksaw. It works just like the one you got hung over your workbench. It goes back and forth in a frame.
You got one like that, don't you, Mickey? Don't you have one of those?
Reciprocating hacksaws? Yeah.
That you made?
That's a blade a worn out blade out of one I got somewhere. And I've ground the teeth off of it. This is one of those. And you can buy them from Inco, and you get at least two tools out of one. It's better if you can find them for free. Let's talk about tools you can buy cheap. I wanted a large drill to go in a number 2 taper, and they are usually fairly short. And I've always had good luck buying and selling on eBay. You got to be selective, but if it's something you have some idea about, you can do pretty well. I picked this up. It is 1 inch the box is falling apart, hence the paper bag, the plastic bag, so you can see. Number 2 Morse taper, and it's, I think, about 10 inches long, which is Craft Supplies. That little puppy, if you get it from Craft Supplies, is about 50 some odd bucks. I got it delivered for 13. I run a one-way lathe center, and it's just like this. That's an 1.75 by 10 thread, and you can make little wooden gizmos. The one-way comes with a cup, so you can stick stuff in it, but it's pretty big. But you can, as long as you can thread the thing, you can make them, stack plywood and make them big or small. Just a wooden nub screwed on there sometimes is real handy to back up the bottom of a bowl when you're finishing it. But at any rate, you can make taps and dies for wood out of bolts and nuts. But I shop my hardware store. It's an Ace up in Sugar Hill. In the last 30 years, screw machine products have just gone to hell in a handbasket. You take bolts and nuts out of some old stuff, and the quality of the machining compared to what you buy now in the hardware store or the big box store is just no comparison. Anyway, the bolts were just way too rough to try to cut threads. That's a regular tap on eBay, and it was less than $10. And when you get into the 3/4 and 1 inch or 1 1/8, these things get pricey if you start buying them from McMaster Carr. And you're probably not going to find, maybe the 1 inch, because that's gotten popular. That's a lathe nose piece. You might find them in places like this, but shop for them on eBay. Now the nuts actually looked a lot better than the bolts. And I think the nut was 50 or 60 cents. They get horrible prices for these things now. But that's my die on a wood thread.
Did you file the inside of that?
Yeah, the transition from a nut to a die is you get a 3-cornered file and cut some grooves in it, so it sort of acts as a cutting edge. It's crude, but we ain't cutting metal here, guys. Right. It works. So that whole rig was just so I could make stuff to go on my tail center. This is, let's see if I got all 3 of them. Yeah, this is the one that's got the 45. This is a Frank Penna idea for ornament tools, hollowing little small globes. This is 1/4 inch square 1018. That's cold roll. It's mild steel. It will not harden. I don't know if I got a longer piece of it. I guess not. Yeah.
Did Mike Holder bring his in Monday for the demo?
Bring his.
His
I
Christmas tree ornament?
I didn't see it.
Well, he had it Tuesday night, and he tried to use it for a small hollow form with real interesting results.
It bent?
Oh, yeah, big about that far off the edge.
Huh.
He was extending it too far off.
Okay.
Is that same as key stock or different?
Pretty much in the same ballpark. Key stock will generally be cad plate, cadmium plated, keeps it from rusting. This has nothing on it, a little mill scale and oil. I was not aware of that. I cut the blanks to 6.5 inches, and again burying them to 1.5 inches. So
You knew he was using it too aggressively, too far over the tailstock, but he thought he would take a chance.
okay, but you're not in an ornament globe. That's okay. He was not doing an ornament. He was doing a hollow form.
No, he was doing a
Okay.
hollow form.
when I started to get ready for this, I stopped by Metal Supermarkets. I bought 3 feet of this stuff. They charged me $1.74. And the idea is you bend one at about a 45, one a little bit, and one straight one. And you got a set of 3 hollowing tools.
What grade steel?
1018.
Hey, Bob,
Cold roll.
question over here is where's Metal Supermarket?
Okay, let's talk about that. As good a time as any.
What was the question, repeat the question?
Where is Metal Supermarkets? Doraville. We'll expand on that a bit. Mostly what I can offer you tonight is some ideas about where to find the steel. Tool bits for metal lathes typically come like these. This is 3/16 and 1/4 inch square. They're less than $1 a piece, and that's from Inca.
What's the difference between regular solder or brazing and silver solder?
There is a world of different solders out there. Most of us are familiar, and it used to be a lead tin solder, which that's changed now. You go to the plumbing supply house or the hardware store, Home Depot, and buy a roll of solder, and you put your plumbing together. That's a 3/4 hard copper coupling. Ultimately, that's going to be a ferrule. The stuff you get at the hardware store does this. It melts it, and don't hold me, if we got any knowledgeable metallurgists in here, don't hold me to these numbers, but it melts in the range of 450 Fahrenheit. As you go up into silver solders, you have a silver content, much stronger. Generally, to get good joints, you need good fits, and later on I'll talk about that. But I think the silver solder starts at about 20% silver. Harris Welding is one of the places that handles all that. An ounce of it 3, 4, 5 years ago cost me like $22. A can of flux is $5, and it's freight. I was using 1/16 diameter wire, and that's too thick for the small, like Ron's tool that's coming around. But the top, or the highest content of silver is 55%. Obviously the most expensive, but we're talking the difference in $15 to $22 or something for an ounce of it. Comes in a little metal can, nice little coil. It melts, I think, in the 950 range. When I'm doing it, I'm looking for it just to go, the steel to go red, not really bright. And you just touch the solder, and when you're doing that, and we'll talk about it a little more later on if we have time, fit is everything. I've got an old Powermatic Model 30 belt disc grinder. It's got the 12-inch disc, and I use that to get my ends square. And use a light behind, you get them together and you get a light behind it, and when you got them lights out before you put flux on it, you're fit. And I don't remember if this is one I want to brag on or not. Well, there's some overflow, but see, if that's 3/8 tool bit about that long, which is a lot cheaper than those 8-inch ones, and this is 1018, and it's silver. There's a butt joint, and it's silver soldered.
Point out about where it is.
If you see, there's a little. The silver solder goes brass looking. You can see where I didn't. It flowed out of the joint, which is okay. It just, but and I'll use some and pass them around a little more. And I'm not sure of what happens. It's, from what I understand, you're getting a molecular bond with the solder and the parent metal, and that will work on the hardened high-speed steel and the 1018 or the soft steel you're using for a shank. Your air conditioner guy, if he's putting in a new compressor or something, or he's silver soldering those joints because they typically run at higher pressure than normal household plumbing.
Any special heat source, or you do it with
Oh.
propane or what?
I use an oxyacetylene. We started out with a little rig I bought used about 30 years ago. It was Goss, which was a name that you saw back then in the air conditioning business. You know, it had the cute little bottles about this tall. And we've upgraded it to Victor regulators and Victor torches and got a little smaller, little larger bottles. But you have no problem with something like that developing enough heat. And you just use a welding tip, and these, huh?
Propane or acetylene and
Yeah.
will work.
That's the surefire thing. And when you get into sections like this, that's 1 by 1/4, I think. You need to get the heat, and you need to get it relatively fast. If you just sit there holding the heat on it because you don't have enough heat coming out of your torch, it tends to bleed down the tool. And eventually you can actually burn where you're working. You can get oxidation and really screw it up. There's some of the guys, I saw one demo, guy from over in South Carolina that does a lot of surface decoration. And he was using Weller soldering irons, little fairly high output, and taking different sizes of brass and either shaping it or filing it and then silver soldering. The biggest thing he was using was 1/4-inch diameter, and he just did it with a little map torch. And I almost talked myself into buying a map torch. They started about $35-40 at Home Depot. And there's some propane air rigs, different kind. I wouldn't attempt it with just a plain old propane bottle that you solder pipe with.
I've got an acetylene and air torch, which is maybe just a little bit warmer than propane, and I have brazed 1-inch square steel tubing,
Oh, yeah?
so heavy wall.
Mm.
So, biggest thing is you need the right tip that'll deliver enough heat at one
Yeah,
time.
and keep in mind, if you've got one little welding torch, and basically they're sized by the hole in the tip. And if you just got a little one, you can't get that much gas through it, whatever the gas is, to get a whole lot of BTUs. And you keep going up in tip size. So there's a little know-how there. It's not rocket science. Okay, let's see.
Bob, you mentioned the butt joint. That's acceptable or best?
Yeah.
Yep.
Just whatever. Wooden Boat did an article a few years ago on taking stainless steel sheet and, grinding or sawing it out and making fittings, like a T-shape for a cleat, I don't remember, but, for sailboat fittings. So the strength is quite good. In the glued together, which is mostly what we're going to talk about, this is a 1/4-inch skew, round skew, and in 5 minutes on a grinder you can make it whatever you want. Here's the one I dropped. Same piece of steel, and that's sort of a hollowing tool. I had the second one, and I didn't need two 1/4-inch skews, so I ground this. And you can work a little bit into a globe or a small hollow form. Now on those you'll see brass pipe. That's more expensive than copper couplings for ferrules. Heavier, looks nicer. The place to get it, well, if you order it from some of the metal places, if you can get just brass pipe, it'll be a lot cheaper. But the easy place to find short lengths is Home Depot in the fan department. The hanging rods they use for ceiling fans, they have them in solid brass. And the last I knew, a 6-inch nipple, which you've either got to live with the threads or cut them off and throw them away. And you can get probably a half a dozen ferrules out of a 6-inch nipple. And they were $6-7. It's not horrendously expensive. It's more than the copper. These at Home Depot were 97 cents a week or so ago. And let me throw in a little aside here. I get irritated when, I don't want to go to that demo because I never want to make tools, or I never want to do hollow forms, or I never want to do something or other. And I think that's pretty counterproductive. Not that every one of y'all are going to want to do tools, or that we're going to go do Wes Jones hollow forms or Mike's threaded boxes. I was doing this demo down at Peach State, and I was knocking Home Depot. I'm in the process of remodeling the main floor on my house, and I've run about 300 feet of copper pipe. And I went to the plumbing supply house, unless it was Sunday, and I just had to have some fittings, because Home Depot puts these lousy stickers on there. And I had goof off, won't do it, lacquer thinner and acetone take forever. Anyway, I was, guy sitting in the group at Peach State, he says, WD-40 will take them right off. You never know when you're going to learn something. I was there doing the demo, and I came out with a real good idea. So, okay.
You use WD-40 for like bumper stickers on the car. Get stuck in a hole. My hair dryer will spray down, leave it out.
Oh yeah? Okay, I'd never heard that. Let's see, what else hadn't we passed? Oh. The way I do ornaments, for the finial, I chuck a 1-inch square piece in the chuck and turn the bottom finial. I turn it around in the chuck, whether you turn it around or not. For the top, I have the bead out here. In other words, it's going to be the top of the finial, and the bottom's here. And you need to make that little piece, the top that sits down on the globe, needs to be hollowed. Well, most lathe tools bend to the left, but not if you buy Allen wrenches. You need to undercut that top finial. So there you go. That's an Allen wrench. And if you want it right-handed, well, it's getting a little short, but you don't want to leave a whole lot hanging over. It wants to twist on you. You buy them from McMaster-Carr, they're about 80 cents a piece in this size, and it's pretty good steel. Well, the next one, you grind it the other way. And you can probably worry out a ring tool, any number of things. Okay, tool handles. This is some more of the high-speed steel. That's 1/4 by 6. That's I guess both of those 1/4 by 8. These are some of the shapes, and let me just run by some of the sources. Metal Supermarkets is local. They're over on Oakdale, on the west side of 85, just outside of 285. Pleasantdale, right. You need to get a price from them and order online. Order on the phone. They don't have prices on their website. Pretty good information on the products they have. And they're real nice to deal with. There's no such thing as too small an order. They don't carry tool steel. We're just talking structural shapes, tubing, pipe, that type thing. Their counterpart is Speedy Metals, and I think they're in Wisconsin. That's online. And they do have prices. Yes, sir.
I was in there the other day, and they had tool steel.
Which store?
Metal Supermarkets?
Yeah.
Metal supermarkets.
You were actually on site, right?
On site.
What was it? Do you know?
No, but they had some. They also had some 4140 stock. I was
Yeah,
interested.
that's enough carbon to heat to harden.
Yeah, it's heat treating steel.
Yeah. I possibly have misspoke. They don't carry high-speed steel. They might carry O1 and W1. And that's something you'll see in metalworking catalogs, Inco, McMaster-Carr, MSC. Yes, sir.
Hey, Bob, back in the, up close to the office there, they've got a drop bin area,
Yeah.
racks and so forth. You know, when you stop by there to get something else, you may want to look at what's in there.
Definitely. It's
Yes.
a lot cheaper.
If you've never been, it's worth taking the time to go by there and just.
I oftentimes find some little tidbit of something that is just perfect for.
And you have to drive around back to come in the back door, so you get to
Yeah.
walk through. It's not big, but you get to walk through the warehouse and see all the stuff, and then you go up to the office. Your counterpart, Speedy Metals, online, pretty much the same stuff. They do have prices on the website. So that's for your soft stuff, non-hardenable. The three good sources I've found, Inco, and that's useinco.com. They have the small tool bits, the quarter by 8 round. Getting the links is a trick on this, because if you're running a metal lathe, you normally have a little bit that long in a tool holder. They don't think about sticking it in a handle, a wooden handle, and using the whole thing. But Inco has got a good selection. When I was researching this workshop, wholesale tools, and it's WT something. Just Google wholesale tools. And when you get on these sites, you're looking for tool bits or high-speed steel tool bits. That's your search word within the site. And the other is Victor Machinery. They've got long squares, long being up to 8 inches. And both WT or wholesale tool and Victor is cheaper than Inco, particularly on the longer stuff, which Inco doesn't have. Now, I got real smart for this workshop. I found a place, Grigg Steel, and they deal exclusively in high-speed steel, but it's in the annealed state. Yes, sir.
How is drill stock compared to high-speed steel?
It generally is high-speed steel.
So if it's called drill stock, you can make tools out of it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's back up. O1 is oil hardening. W1 is water hardening. And those are pretty simple heat treat materials. It comes in flat stock, but typically in round stock.
Is that considered high-speed steel?
No. And you can get specs on the sites that have it. But basically, in either one, you heat it to cherry red, which will be around in the $1,400-$1,500 range, Fahrenheit range. And then you quench it. Oil, you quench it in warm oil. Motor oil's fine, just be careful. Do it outside in case you set the oil on fire. But you plunge it in, so there's not much chance of that. The other is in water. And then you anneal it. Let's say you get a skew shape on the end, and you polish that up. And you heat it in, and there's tables to tell you where all these are. You heat it to, say, 500, and that's going to give you a Rockwell C, 60 hardness. When you plunge it, it goes too hard, and then you heat it and let it slowly cool. And some of those tempering temperatures in the 300 and 400 range. You can do some of it in your kitchen oven. I haven't gotten into that, but drill rod, by the way, if you want a nice, drill rod's TG&P is the term. It's turned, ground, and polished. It comes in 3-foot lengths, and you'd be amazed how cheap that is, but I believe any you'll find will be in the annealed state, the soft state. It has to be heat treated. When you get to high-speed steel, the heat treatment on that is, in my way of thinking, way too complex to try to do. I think you're wasting time because if I remember it, and you can find these steel companies, the heat treat procedures, but you bring it up to like 1200 and soak it for 3 hours, and then you go to 1800 and soak for 2 hours, and then you bring it to this, and then you need a furnace with controls, and these are the guys that are wrapping this stuff up in little stainless foil so you don't harm the surface of your tools. But Griggs, they have a tremendous variety of high-speed steel in the annealed state. They sell rod. Yes, sir.
Is it possible to bend high-speed steel? Pretty much you can't bend it, right?
In the annealed state, yes. And these things, that's ready to go in a metal lathe. I've never tried it, Ron, but I believe it's so brittle.
I'm thinking for for your hollowing tools,
Uh-huh.
you're not gonna be able to make that
Bob, generally, tool steel you cannot bend in a cold state
Right.
because it's too brittle.
Yeah.
That's why they sell it in the annealed state,
Yeah.
so that you can bend it then and then
Yeah.
heat treat
But
it.
yeah, in the annealed state, you can bend it. It's easy to machine. You can, shape your tool.
Is that how you buy tool steel?
If you're making bits, yeah. If you're, making tooling for metalworking.
Yeah, but hard. His question was,
Right.
when you go down to the store to buy it, when you buy it, is it in an annealed state or is it already hardened? When you go down to metal,
You're passing around some of this quarter by 8.
Okay, that's
Can I
hard.
bend that?
No. I've never done it, Ron, but I believe if you put it in a vise and hit it, bing, 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 it'd just be bouncing across the floor.
Same thing with the drill rod?
The drill rod generally is annealed, so you can do that, but then you've got to heat treat it to get it hard.
Okay.
the short lengths of the drill rod are hard, I think.
Yeah,
So you'd be better off taking your soft steel, bending it to shape, and then silver soldering on a little half-inch tip or something.
one of those came around was that. One of those
I saw
is either quarter or 3/16. So you can take those little short tool bits, cut them in half, and get two out of them. And then it's still two. You do that so you got clamping room. And then after you get it together, you grind off a bunch of it because when it's sticking out there, that's too much torque across the tool rest.
Yeah.
Oh. Anyway,
That's why I want to put that in the less, so get it.
let's make a few chips here. The exact centers are important. Now you can any number of ways to chuck up a tool handle. I'm going without a chuck. If you do a chuck, you got to have a little wood here, and you got this big blob of metal in your way. But the neat thing about it, if you drill your hole on this end, which is the easy way to do it, you can leave it in the chuck, and you never measure your ferrule. You just start, get it close, oversize, turn the taper so you can. And then you sneak up on it, and you don't have to measure, and the chuck holds it, it's sticking out there. Well, this is a little different. We're talking making tools, and we're doing it cheap. And so we're going to make a mandrel for a handle first. And we're going to do this sort of, I hope, pretty quickly. But the other thing, I used to be scared to death of a skew. I could hold them things so tight I could cut threads with them. And if you don't do this, you'll believe what I tell you, or we'll assume you do. But until you try it, it's hard to comprehend. You're not supposed to hang a skew. Pretty uneventful. And after you do that, you got to tighten it out a little bit. Now this is a small piece of wood, and I'm not hogging it off a whole lot, but it works. And I left one on my bench. What this is a garden variety cup center. And there's a guy on eBay right now that's selling them for $5 and with freight included. The cheapest I've found is Penn State at $16. And let me unhitch all this. It's a cup center, and it's got the little pointy, and that's very carefully ground going zip, 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 zip on the corner of your stone. I need, okay.
Are you meaning you added the teeth?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
a step center, you can drop 40 or 50 bucks on one of them things.
16 from PSI.
Okay. 5 from the guy on eBay. And see, these used to be rattling around all over. You buying school lathes at auction, it'd come with 2 or 3 of these. I think they pretty well quit supplying them. But at any rate, if you want to learn how to use a skew, get a center like that. And let's see if I got enough. Oh. That's not good. I knew the thing wasn't supposed to be rattling like that. Okay. Now, I'm going for a number 2 Morse taper. I'm fixing to put this in the headstock. In the interest of time, if you try to stick it in the hole, you can't see anything. You can wall it around and see the high spot. But you get some plywood. And I've got one halfway done here. 3 pieces, a base and 2 sides. Is there any centers with this lathe? Or do I have any more?
Should be one in the box. Well,
Well, we'll get this one out. Yeah, okay. Using the little one, but you super glue this together, 2 pieces of plywood. You hold your center up there and you super glue this side and you hold it, and bingo, you got a number 2 Morse taper outside gauge.
just move your hand away so it's
Oh.
lay it on there. No, lay it on there.
Okay. You glue one side and then the other. And if you're using just a simple, the chucks, keeping, it's supposed to be up here. And you pinch it together. And then I'm using medium and putting the medium on the little stick and shooting the accelerator on the base. And it takes 2 or 3 minutes to set, so when you slide it apart, you got to be careful. But that gives you your gauge. And on this end, you turn whatever size hole you want. But okay. This is what we're going for. And that says 390 because that's about 64th over 3/8. And I've got a 3/8 bit with me. Got another hand, I could do this quick. First thing is slow the lathe down. Okay, we do the high accuracy centers. One thing about using the mandrel, and you can spend at least half a day on the internet seeing different ways to turn tool handles. And I admit to being a little bit weird. And I'm talking about how to make all these cheap tools, but I like nice tools too. I use a Starrett center punch. Go figure. So I've got this. highly detailed depth gauge on my drill bit. It's supposed to be in the neighborhood of a 1/2 inch. It's a sharp little guy. All the way down. You don't want to do this real fast, lathe speed. And by the way, if you're in a pinch, if you don't pull it off of that drill bit, you can use that to drive the piece with. You can also take a piece of 3/8 rod and grind a crude spur center on it. And you need to be real careful doing what I am here. I've got a Morse taper holding that chuck, and I'm backing the piece off of it. And you can pull that out of the taper. That one locked up nicely. So, but you never want to do that fast, in case it does come. You can always, at that speed, if it starts walking out, you got it captured in the hole. Just shut the lathe off. It's not going to do anything real weird. Okay. Okay, this is the mandrel. It goes in there. And that's not a real tight drive either. Now here, this is a handle that's roughed out. And I'll switch tools here. This is the tool I usually use. Both of those are braze tools, a skew and a sort of a scraper, a badan, call it what you like. But now, in the overall scheme of things, I fit the ferrule first. And this can be a little tedious, i.e. slow. Oh, we'll pass this one around in a minute. I measure. Okay, I'm running about 978 there. I'm looking for about 880, 780. Down to 930 of the intent is to put a copper ferrule on this. Gosh, still 920. The secret I've kept from you is 3/4 copper ferrule is about 7/8 bore. Why is it 3/4? Well, it's 3/4 pipe. And this is one coupling goes on the OD of the pipe. I'm pretty good there. About 880. The nose is 890. We'll take a little of that off. And knock a little taper on it so you can get the. Now I'm not going. This is it. I picked up the wrong one, but that's ready for a copper ferrule. And why this is the wrong one, this is a showpiece. The old story, I'd rather be lucky than good. You know, when you're roughing these out, gee, you do them pretty quick. You know, you can lay your tool across there and tell when it's round or not. I just happened to stop on this one to look, see where I was. Can you get that? Best I can tell, that's a rock. and I found it with my eyeball, not my tool. Okay.
Did you tool find it?
No. That's what I said. I'd rather be lucky than good. I just happened to stop. And, well, son of a gun, look at there. Okay. This one is a little over 7/8. And if you do them this way, you don't have to be too particular. You got see, I've got a shoulder here like I was going to put a ferrule on it. And you sailors might, we're fixing to whip the end of a rope here. And this is mason's twine. And used is fine. It's nice if it's not too dirty, but it's not too important. Okay, I've got a loop out here. And if I can quit being so fumble-fingered, I'm going to catch it with my thumb and not let it slip, maybe.
Pull your tag in back under there.
Yep.
Hold it up.
Yeah. You should be able to do this by yourself, and you don't have to get it terribly tight, but you want to, I think it'll hold now, Dan. And who is it, Mike, that started this? One of the name Turners.
All that started, Dave Ellsworth.
Yeah, okay. And I'm just winding that around reasonably tight. Try not to drop it. Yeah, that would do it if you... Should have asked if I had a bosun's mate in here could do this quick. I would say that's far enough. And I did remember to bring my utility knife. And you get the end of the part you just wrapped and you pull it out here. Can you see? And you pull that in, and it just sucks it up under there. It's got a little tangle. And you trim those off. And there's a hollowing tool. This is way too long, but there's an example. Two examples there. One, I was trying to do Joe Ruminski's 3-axis on the back end to get a sort of a triangle shape in the handle, and that was unsuccessful, but that's the whipped ferrule. Yeah, no, but you can. Copper wire, that looks real good. Okay, then, okay, we've got a ferrule epoxied on, and by the way, most of the common epoxies will melt in the 140, 150 Fahrenheit range. That varies. We'll turn this copper with wood turning tools, but it does get hot, so you got to go easy, or you can get it warm enough your ferrule starts slipping if it wasn't a dry fit. And yeah, a belt sander will do it faster than this, but I want to show you that you can turn copper. This is in the best of all possible worlds. You want your wood and your metal to be about the same length, just because that's a lot of copper to turn off as slow as it is. But we'll play with it. Again, back on the the little mandrel. And this is half-inch high-speed steel, silver brazed on half-inch mild steel. And it's sort of a round nose scraper effect. And this does get rid of the Home Depot labels. If you didn't do the WD-40 trick, or what did you say, Jimmy?
Air dryer.
Air dry, okay. Now,
Why do you say that?
another nice thing about my silly little mandrel idea, if I booger up that mandrel, it's not going to hurt my tool. It'll take me about 5 minutes to make another one. And I'm pushing this a little hard for heat. Now, believe me, if you have patience enough, you can bring it all the way back. And then on tool handles, this one obviously hasn't been finished. This is 150, and that's all I do to them is the 150. But another half hour, is that?
Yeah, we need to finish at 8:30. Or we need to finish probably 20 after so we get cleaned up.
Okay. I didn't take that far enough back, and I really wasn't trying to sand in this area, but you can see it's pretty decent. As I understand, boats have always been interesting to me, but the old dorymen, this is where they fish long lines. They had the schooners that hauled they had this nest of dories on deck, and they dropped them off every morning, and they long line, and they rode those things back and forth. That on their handles, on the oars, were unfinished. Felt like a varnish or a finish would tend to raise blisters on hands worst. I just sand them to 150, and I've got one magic elixir, and I don't know if they have it here. Some hardware stores have little cakes of beeswax. It's fairly expensive, it's $2 or $3 for a cake of it. But you shave it up with your pocket knife and then start pouring turpentine. I'm one of these guys that think turpentine smells good. Not everybody agrees with me. I was born in Northwest Florida, so I have a bit of an affinity for the piney woods. But just wipe that on. There's plenty enough finish. If you want to take it to some exotic finish, you can. Sizes. This is a half-inch pipe coupling. And those tools I first did for Chattahoochee with this, that's too small to grip. Most tools, to me, the handles are too long and often too small in diameter. Now this is some Wingay I have scrap, and that's some half-inch brass pipe. Obviously this isn't finished. That will take a quarter inch. You can imagine what shape you want to turn. You say, I've never turned a tool handle and I don't really know what I like. I'm not sure if what I've got in my box, my rack is just right. Get a 2x4, rip it in half, and turn half of it into tool handles. You can play with links and shapes. I think they're all floating around here.
I got a bunch of them over here, Bob.
Yeah. that's roughly the shape I like. That's an ornament tool size. For some of these other tools, I would go longer. But I've pretty well come around to using the 3/4 on everything. In that, you know, if you're doing fine close work, you still want something. If it's too small, to me, if you stay with it a while, your hand will start cramping. And so that's the shape I like. But what I like doesn't mean a thing to you. It's your hand and your handle. Go. And if you don't, or you're not sure what you want to use, get some 2x4. And the nice thing about it, if you can learn to turn 2x stock, you can turn anything, because it does not turn well. You got hard and soft grain if it's pine. Some of the spruce isn't that bad, but you've got quite a variation in density in the summer wood and the winter wood. To get a good surface off of your tool with that takes pretty good tool control. So for about $3, you can make a whole bunch of shavings out of a 2x4. And when you're done, brown wood burns good, so put it in the fire. This is a work in progress. These are some nice handles. Kurt Couch at Chattahoochee he makes tiny little things, machine, it's a CNC shop. You know, every machine in there is probably $250,000, and there's rows of them. And they do things to assemble circuit boards, little vacuum gizmos, high precision. Anyways, Kurt started making these, and I won one at the Christmas raffle, and the other, you get one if you do a demonstration at Chattahoochee. So I lucked out. I had one half, whichever one, it's half and 5/8, and whichever one I had, I got the other. Now this is a radical, difficult way of making a tool. This is 1/2-inch mild steel. You drill a hole in the end of it, and you super glue a 3/16 tool bit. Now that's just like it came out of the package. You would not use it nearly that long, probably about at my thumbnail. Cut it off with a Ziz wheel. You know what I'm talking about? Ziz wheel, does that compute?
Die grinder.
Die grinder with a little thin wheel. It's yeah, it's a thin abrasive cutting wheel. I've used 3-inch diameters. You'd cut that off. This one is 5/8. Now you can just put this stock, you know, in a wooden handle like we've been talking about. But this is a piece of 5/8 mild steel. By the way, if anybody's got a throwaway wide planer blade, I'd like to talk to you. That's a jointer blade out of an 8-inch jointer, and it's been used way too long. That's the bit in here. It's hard. It's high-speed steel typically. So find it here. You cut a slot in the back of it. Now it's floating around here somewhere. Anyway, fairly heavy scraper. Let's see if we. By the way, don't scrape your hand across the end of that high-speed bit. That's the same. And see the CA oozing out. If you don't want to buy or make something nice like Kurt does, and I don't, is he selling those things? I know he intended to, but I think he got away from it. But you've probably seen this. It's a Fred Messer. collet. This one happens to be 1/2 inch. And he makes this little gizmo, and it's got a center drill in it. You put that in the back end of the tool. You put this in a wooden handle. Now you can center the wooden assembly, and he makes them 3/8, 1/2 inch, and 3/4. This is aluminum. I think aluminum, brass, and I guess that's it. Well, I'll leave that loose. Mark Saleh keeps these. Fred's over in Gaucher, Mississippi, which is just up the bay from either Gulfport or Biloxi, I forget which, South Mississippi. Real interesting guy. He's around town fairly often. He's got a daughter that's an attorney over in Sandy Springs. But he's demonstrated around town. But anyway, you can pick those up from Mark for $5. Okay. A lot of stuff. I run a one-way stronghold. You can see the exotic workmanship here. That's as big as it'll go, and that's the small side. I just whacked that out several years ago, and you did it real fast on a bandsaw, but it works.
What is that?
When you're sizing a tenon for your chuck.
I see.
And it really, if you got a nice blank and you're trying to get all the length out of it you can, and it's really irritating to cut the tenon too small for the chuck to grab. And I don't have the endless supply of different chuck jaws. Okay, in that tool class, we machined this on Jack's mill, and I think I can grind them, just rough grind them by hand faster. It still has to be drilled and tapped for the set screws to hold a high-speed steel bit, but that's a takeoff on John Jordan tools. Hollowing, yeah, deep hollowing. This is 3/4 stock. Typically that goes into a hollowing rig. Most people don't want to get that deep into a bowl just holding on the end of this thing. A touch on how I silver braze. I have a piece of 3x3 angle, 1/4 inch thick, that is about 2.5 feet long. And as I said, the trick is holding those pieces. This is some of those small braze tools. And that's hardly been ground. Here, excuse me, Dan. You can still see the flux on this one. But that's one of those 1/4 inch bits on an angle across 1/4 inch mild steel. Just pass it around. And I've got this complex arrangement. You need to hold it still and be able to push that joint together tightly and not bump it around while you're trying to get it hot enough to run the silver in there. So particularly on the round things, now that's flat. These are 7/16 nuts with a, can you see the little groove in them? These are V-blocks just whacked out on the table saw. And what do I do with it? It doesn't matter. If we've got a piece here, you can make it hold still on those little slots. And you stick a V-block across it. That's a little high for that. And you can clamp it. And you do that on the other side, and you can fit them together. And before you, it works out fairly convenient. I've got a metalworking vise. The top of the jaws are about here. So the time I get the 3x3 angle clamped in the vise, and that's just a platform that won't burn up. keeps from setting the house on fire. I'm up here, and after you see, you got another one over here. This, they were putting this on the square. This, obviously, those are not lining up, but you check that joint with your little flashlight behind it, and then when you get it right, it doesn't hurt if it's round to take a magic marker and mark the top, and then you put it into flux, which is just borax and distilled water. But it fills up. You can't tell if you got a good fit. But you clamp these. The reason for the nuts, I want this out in space so the nut or the angle, which is represented by the drill bed, you'd never want to do it on your bed. I can get heat on this, and it's got to run a ways before it gets sucked away. If I had these nuts out here close, I wouldn't have room for my torch, and it would pull the heat out faster. And you don't do this at breakneck speed, but you need to get it hot, touch it with it. You don't want to dilly around with it. If you're having trouble getting it hot enough, you're liable to burn the surface, and then chances are it's a bad joint. And I get some failures, particularly I've got some half-inch nose. Well, let me show you how these, and I whacked it across the vise and it went clunk. That was embarrassing. But this is the 1/4x8. That's about $3.11 from Inco. We were getting the 3/8x8 from, I believe, WT Tools with freight. We only had about 4 or 5 of those in the Chattahoochee workshop, and with freight and tax, it came out like $5.20, I believe, for a 3/8x8. And they're square. It's in that range. So it's not nothing, but it's a whole lot cheaper. You can build a 3/8 tool out of round stock that you can get in any number of catalogs and find tools that size in the $40, $45 range. And you can go to Penn State. There's some, but you can do this pretty cheap. And if you don't like the shape, or you do 2 of these, or if for the money you get, you go pay $50 or something for a Crown something or other tool, or a Hamlet, or a brand. You don't want to regrind it. One of these, I need a round nose scraper and it's square. Well, about 3 minutes on the grinder takes care of it. So, all right. Anybody have questions? I think I'm getting about to my time here.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
It's more metal working than it is woodworking. But on those small tools like this, where you have this one's not braze.
No, that's.
But anyway, where you have the small tip, and you got that. How do you? Now I see your alignment tool, your alignment mechanism with the nuts and all, but holding this little piece of metal here that's perpendicular to or at an angle from your base that you're sticking it to, how do you hold that in place while you're welding it? Brazing it.
Those little 2 bits back around. Here we go. You saw these.
It's this kind of thing right here.
Yeah, you cut that in half with a Zis wheel,
Yeah, but I mean,
which will still be longer than you need. And on that, let me see if I can show this without taking it out of the package.
And then the stock is cut at a 45 or whatever angle.
Yeah. And
my question was how do you hold it while you're soldering it? The cutting it and all that's immaterial. How do you hold it while you're cutting it?
one nut.
One nut.
See, can you see this? Where the nut's under my finger. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, because of the packaging, I haven't got it in contact.
Right.
And he puts the wooden block on top of
Yeah, you clamp. Well, these square ones you can go clamp straight away.
it. Oh, okay.
And that stays in place while you're welding it? You don't have to clamp it or anything?
Yeah. No. I clamp them because. Yeah. Well, you can see what I've got.
Piece? I mean, the short piece is what I'm concerned about. I'm not concerned about the long
The short piece, in that case, the braze was square, so you can clamp straight on it. They come.
You cut it off after the.
They come 2.5, I cut them in half, and it's still way too long, but that's about as short, that seems to be the ideal, long enough to clamp and not waste too much steel, but
Not
after,
run into a heat sink problem.
no, that's, and this stuff with even a pretty fine oxyacetylene tip, you can get them hot fairly quickly.
If that wears down too much, can you burn it off, or you just grind it off and start over? If you want to put a new tip on it.
Depends on if you had
A lot
some,
of Christmas tree ornaments.
yeah.
Okay.
A lot of Christmas.
I'm 76 and I do ornaments, but I don't plan to have that problem. Yes, sir.
Once you get them soldered up and everything, you don't have to, with a high-speed steel, you don't have to re-temper them?
No. Comment on high-speed steel, and I think a lot of this stuff that we find in catalogs on wood turning tools is bull roar. Garden variety high-speed steel is M2. That was developed in the 30s, and it really came into its own when we geared up for production in World War II. The claim to fame for high-speed steel and the big advance in the metalworking business was those little tool bits where I laid them. I don't know. That goes into a heavy bar on a lathe, metal lathe carries. There's just a little bit of that sticking out, and it cuts metal. That will run at red heat and hold its edge pretty well, and hold it. It does not get soft at 1400 degrees. It's still got the strength. So you could run that in a metal lathe at red heat, again about 1400 Fahrenheit, and it would hold up. Which means before that, they didn't have tool steel that would stand up to that, so you had to take lighter cuts. For production, that's slowing you down. This sped up production tremendously. And if you really dig into it, most of the varieties, there's M4 cobalt and this and that and the other, they have specific metalworking properties. And I don't think it really matters for wood turning. Now, if any of you guys are standing in front of a lathe on production work 8 hours a day, in that world, maybe if you can keep from sharpening 5 times a day, you've probably picked up 7 or 8 minutes, and that's maybe another piece. If it doesn't hold its edge quite as well, go sharpen. None of us, very few of us are real production turners, and I think until you get to that point, my suggestion is don't worry too much about the latest and greatest version of high-speed steel, or carbide for that matter, and I'm trying to one of those that you can take this nose, by the way, that cost me about $6 for a tap drill size, a fresh one from McMaster Carr, and the tap. That's a 1024 thread. The screw came from the hardware store. That's not anything special.
What type of steel is that holding the bit, or the steel rod?
1018, cold roll, soft, ho-hum, structural. Is for what it's worth, 1018 means that, I think I'm right, 0.18% carbon in the steel. You have to get over 0.45 or half a percent of carbon in steel so that you get the chemistry that allows it to harden with heat treating. This stuff you can heat and quench all day and it's still going to be the same thing. You might change the molecular structure a little bit, but to no advantage. In the high speed, or the tool steels, and there's a variety of them besides high speed. High speed's the common one. You drill bits, all sorts of things, unrelated to wood turning or high speed steel. And practically all hand metalworking runs on high speed steel tooling.
Hey, Bob?
Yes, sir.
With a tool like that, you could reshape that end and then use machining carbide inserts, right?
Yeah, I'm looking into that. The guy I mentioned that made the handles, Kurt tells me that any high-speed steel insert that's rated for aluminum And from my digging around in the last week or so, that's basically C2 carbide. Don't ask me what that means. But that gives you a cutting edge that works well on wood. The best way I think Mike put me onto this, Captain Eddie, is that right? Guy down in Louisiana. He sells 3 carbide bits with screws for $18 and $24 depending on size. But there's no, if you get it like Carbide Depot, there's hundreds of different shaped bits and different angles, and some of them have this screw. That's just a plain button head screw in a 1024 hole. Again, hardware store. But on your carbide bits, your screw, some of them are 82-degree countersinks, but there's a wide variety of other methods of those screws. And I'm having trouble finding good information on which screw goes with which bit. Carbide Depot gives you that information, but they sell in packs of 10, and even at $6 or $5. I've got one from them. I think it's a closeout, and it's a aluminum type for $2 a bit. And I think you got to buy. It's either 6 or 10. Metal shops just go through those things, and you finish. If they go dull, you throw them away. You normally don't resharpen the inserts. But yeah, you can do the same thing. And on this,
You can start wrapping up.
okay. I ground one of these flats, and the other one I sawed and filed a little bit. You see the end still hasn't been, and I haven't, this has never touched wood. I got that ground out to this point this afternoon, and I determined my hole isn't perpendicular to my surface. My hole is pretty well straight across the bar, but my surface has got a little slope in it, so it doesn't hold that well. But you can do the same thing, and that's probably $1.50 worth of steel that you can file, cut with a hacksaw or whatever. So anyway, the brazing and this, again, this is a work in progress, but I think there's a lot of possibilities here. Anything else? I understand it's time to wrap it up. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate you having me.
This is what you're doing for the door prize? Bob, this-
Oh, yeah, it should be.